Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's your girl Ushi and welcome back to another true crime episode. I always say that most of my cases are gruesome, right? This one is a special kind of gruesome. Before I jump into it, I would like to give a disclaimer. If you are the type of person that does not want to hear about body parts being cut off, I will highly suggest that you just skip this video and then I will see you in the next one. I don't want to say I'm excited to get into this case, but all I can say is that I have been dreaming about covering this case. You know, I have some champagne in the mix. This glass is like cutesy. It's giving demure. Today's video is going to be covering the infamous B1 butcher. I'm assuming it's a man, though we don't know who he is. He started his reign of terror in the year 2005. On the 20th of August 2005, people that were passing by alongside the B1 road noticed that there was a body lying on the grass. If you look at it from far, it looked like a mannequin. But if you get closer, this is not a mannequin. What it is, however, is a body of a young woman. And she was sadly dead. They called the police officers. Once they got there, right off the bat, they knew that this was homicide. This was murder. This was no accident. They concluded that this body that they just found belonged to a 22-year-old woman named Melanie Johnson. During that time when she was murdered, was reported to be a prostitute. Her body was found naked, mutilated. She was also strangled to death. Her cause of death was strangulation. A month later, on the 25th of September, alongside the B1 road, another body was discovered. This body was discovered on the side of Perpetrator, that side of the horse stables. This body also, just like the previous one, it was naked. The body was found in a shallow grave. It was like the killer just placed it there so that it can be easily discovered. This body belonged to 22-year-old Mapula Juanita. Unlike the body of Melanie, Mapula's body was decapitated. Her head was cut off from the base of her neck. They saw that she had no defensive wounds on her body. There was nothing on her body to indicate as to what could have possibly been the cause of death. Also, her head was not there. At this point, the police officers were, starting to get a little bit worried because they were thinking, do we have a serial killer on our case? They couldn't conclusively determine that they have a serial killer on their case because Juanita's body couldn't be linked to the same killer as the one who killed Melanie. But the similarities were very uncanny. They were thinking this is possibly or probably the same killer. For a person to actually be classified as a serial killer, they should have had, killed 3 or more people. This person has only so far killed 2 people that the police knew about. A month later, her head was discovered in trash plastic bag, and the head was discovered by people who like to go into dustbins in winter, and this is how they are busy discovering all these body parts. When her head was discovered, it was determined that she died from a blow from her head because at the back of her head there was like an injury that looked like she was hit with a blunt object. The position where the injury was an indication that Mabula didn't really see the attack coming, and the person attacked her from behind. She didn't really see it coming, and it was just an attack that happened like that. Mind you, first of all, Namibia has never up to this point ever dealt with a serial killer. This was our very first serial killer. But they came up with a plan. They decided to team up with the South African investigators, the ones that personally handled the ABC killer case. They had recently cracked their own serial killer case, and together the Namibian as well as the South African investigators started to work on the case of the B1 butcher. So they offered a reward of $20,000 to whoever could come up with information that could possibly lead to the arrest of the killer. On the 25th of December 2005, another body was discovered. This body belonged to Biola Swartboy, and she was only 18 years old. Viola was found buried in a shallow grave alongside the B1 road. There was like no way for them to know how she passed on. Up to now, we don't know. They decided to link it to the other two murders, the one of Mapula and Juanita. I think maybe in the end, they kind of concluded that it was strangulation. These were the only 3 victims that died at the hands of the B1 butcher in 2005. He just stopped for 2 years. When serial killers have a cool down period this long, is usually because maybe something significant happened in their lives, like for example maybe they got married or they had children, they met somebody, they fell in love. It could be like a major something happened in their lives. Maybe that's the reason why they took this cool down period. I wish he would have stopped killing forever. I wish that was like it. On the 13th of June 2007, Sana Helena Garvez, she was last spotted in Windhoek around 11 p.m. in the evening around a very popular hotel along the Independence Avenue. And 3 days later, a human torso was discovered in the dustbins alongside the B1 road. Human torso that was discovered was dissected into 2. It was just a torso. It didn't have anything else with it. Alongside the same road, in another dustbin like a few kilometers ahead, they found the thighs as well as the part of the legs. In one of the legs, there was an old bullet wound. Sana's mother, she came over to see if maybe this is her daughter. To her dismay, this is when she found out that this is indeed her daughter. She recognized that it from the bullet wound Sana had from her legs. This is when she knew that this is Sana, this is her daughter. A few days later, her head was now discovered. With Sana's body, she was like so brutally murdered. For the other victims, they also died in a very brutal manner. Her body was cut off in parts, just like an animal, and that was horrific. 3 of her middle toes on both of her feet were missing. I would say that maybe he just wanted to take it as a trophy. The police officers are for sure know they are dealing with a serial killer. All body parts, by the way, were discovered alongside the B1 road, along the road, either in those dustbins or just left there by the road in plastic bags. This is how he was discarding the bodies. So after Sana, the other 2 victims were never really identified. The very last victim was found in September 2007. The police officers couldn't really conclusively link that victim to the B1 butcher because there was also another guy who was busy copying the B1 butcher. It was a nurse from Kenya. Last victim, it was suspected that maybe he belonged to him, not the B1 butcher. So in total, the B1 butcher claimed the lives of 5 women, but the 3 previous victims, Juanita Mapula, Melanie Janse, as well as Sana Garvez, those ones we knew for sure that they were ladies of the night. They were prostitutes. With Mapula, the parents kind of disputed this. There was another prostitute that was interviewed by the police who said that Juanita and Sana, they knew each other very well. They were on the streets together, so they knew each other very well, meaning that there's a very high chance that Juanita was also a prostitute. Plus, she was spotted 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the city center around the agent service station. That kind of also just contributed to people thinking that she was also a prostitute like all the other ladies. Other than that, that is all we know about these ladies. These or the body parts that were being discovered, they were frozen. This person was taking these women somewhere. He would kill them there, dismember them, and then keep the body parts in the fridge somewhere. When he was ready to dump them, then he would take these body parts and then he would go dump them alongside the B1 road. The police officers knew that it had to be somebody who is either in the medical profession or a butcher because of how precise and good the cuts were. The cuts were so precise that they knew that whoever committed this crime knew what he was doing. He knew how to cut the bones and all that. So he was choosing prostitutes, and this was due to one of 2 reasons. One, all prostitution is illegal in Namibia. So even if they went to go report, no, nothing is going to be done because Police officers really don't really care about prostitutes that much. Another reason also I feel like he chose prostitution is probably because he didn't like prostitutes that much. The women that he was choosing are biracial women who could either speak Afrikaans and Nama or Damara or both fluently. The investigators had a profile. They were looking for a male who is white, Caucasian, who is around 40 years old, very organized and very neat. They just choose all the evidence that they can gather, and then from this evidence, this is how they are able to form a profile of the killer. Let's talk about the suspects that the police officers or the investigators had at hand. Here are the suspects. Suspect number 1. In 2007, around August, a man called Haynes Knerum. Haynes was arrested because he was being accused of raping a 29-year-old woman, and then after he was done raping her, he tried to strangle her while she ran straight to the police station, and they arrested Haynes. Haynes was arrested in 2007 and he stayed in prison for almost 4 years. He was released in February 2010. He was not happy, did not have any evidence against him, and because of this, he decided to sue the government for defamation of character for being implicated as the B1 butcher. I don't know whether he won or not. As for the rape, all they said was he was released in February 2010 because of lack of evidence. Hans Hasselman committed suicide in 2008 after being implicated with the murders in his home in Windhoek West. This was not the first time that Hans was having a run-in with the law. Around 2004, Hans actually was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of 2 people. Hans seemed to have like an anger problem. The second person that he murdered in 2004 was a gate man. It took like a long time to open, and Hans decided that he's just going to murder the man because of that. The evidence against Hans were kind of, a little bit overwhelming. Sana's DNA, remember Sana, the third known victim? Her DNA was actually discovered on the jacket of Hans, like on his jacket. That is where her DNA was discovered. So his DNA profile, Hans' DNA profile, was discovered on the letter that was sent to the police officers regarding the death of Mapula, the second victim. All this were not enough to actually get Hans arrested. The DNA profile on the letter was just that, a DNA profile. Doesn't prove anything. It can be him, it can be anybody in his family. It doesn't necessarily specifically pin him down. And it's something called a mitochondria DNA, and they needed a nuclear DNA. They couldn't get that. So because of that, that was like inconclusive. As for the DNA found on his jacket, since Sana was like a prostitute, chances of that happening was like extremely high, and she could have met him on the job as she was working. So that also was not concluded, or it was inconclusive. Now we have a third theory. Dr. Pindar was arrested by the police while he was drinking and driving. While he was in police custody, detained, he started to make jokes about him being the B1 butcher. He was joking about it. The police officers decided to question him about it because of the fact that he was drunk. The police officers or the investigators felt like Dr. Pindar was not their guy, so they decided to let him go in the morning. There is somebody else also who confessed to be the B1 butcher. It happened in Oshiwarongo. A man randomly, while he was at the till paying for his stuff, telling the cashier that he is the B1 butcher. She was packing bags, and the next thing she knows, she is listening to this man going on about how he committed these crimes, how he killed this woman, how he got away with it. She was so traumatized that she had to be taken down to the hospital to be treated for shock. The man was arrested, no evidence. He was released. That is it about the B1 butcher. A lot was going on, but in the end, we still do not know who the B1 butcher is. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, guys, my YouTube people, I have to end today's video on that note. I really hated the fact that I did not know anything about the victims, and all I knew about them was the fact that they were prostitutes. These people were actually mothers, sisters, and daughters. They were not just prostitutes. And I really hate the fact that the media just pointed them as prostitutes. Because although prostitution is illegal in our country, that doesn't mean that they cannot be taken care of. So we really need a safe environment for prostitutes in Namibia. Dango, okay, as soon as possible. Now, with that, guys, I gotta go and I gotta close off today's case or today's video. Thank you so much. And with that, I am going to close off by saying that stay safe, stay happy, stay motivated, and just live your life the best way you know how. And with that, I am going to see you in the next case. Bye.